My name is Noah, and I want to share my story with you. If you're hearing my voice, you're likely one of my descendants, and I want to explain the reasons that led us to the current situation. We have witnessed a catastrophe of unprecedented scale, leaving only my family and me as the last survivors. It's hard to believe, but everyone else has perished. The scale of this destruction is incomprehensible, and the number of lives lost is utterly devastating. I constantly wonder what went wrong and how everything fell apart so quickly. This has been an unrelenting judgment. How did we get to this point? How did it all happen? Various forces combined to bring about the flood. The chain of events that led to the Great Flood began with the existence of the sons of God. It is believed that these beings, endowed with supernatural powers and considered divine, existed even before the creation of the world. However, one of them rebelled against God, becoming a fallen being and setting the stage for the tragedy that would come. Although heaven was intended to be their eternal home, they ended up being cast out of it. What caused all this? Angels, heavenly beings, were created specifically to reside in heaven with God. Their main purpose is to worship Him and carry out His commands. They were designed to glorify God and act as intermediaries between Him and humans. Unlike people who were created to live on earth, angels were born to dwell in heaven. However, these beings, known as angels, decided to leave their original place and venture into our world, following their own plans. They abandoned their home in the Garden of Eden, a paradise where Adam and Eve lived in peace and harmony. It was here that Satan began his first challenge against God's authority on earth, causing the fall and curse of Adam and Eve. To this day, my family continues to suffer the effects of that curse. As you can imagine, farming and getting what we need to live is incredibly difficult. The Lord declared, "Cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil, you will eat from it all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, and you will eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your brow, you will eat your food until you return to the ground, for from it you were taken, for dust you are, and to dust you will return." Since then, my ancestors and I have had to work tirelessly to survive. God's disappointment at their disobedience was clear. Adam and Eve lost the right to stay in the Garden of Eden. They made the grave mistake of eating the forbidden fruit. This disobedience filled God with sadness, and as a result, Adam and Eve were banished from the paradise that was once their home. Adam and Eve had many sons and daughters, including Cain and Abel. As their offspring grew, so did humanity. As their sons and daughters matured, they married and started their own families, and thus the population gradually began to increase. Cain, after killing his brother Abel, produced a line of descendants marked by evil and danger, a line that strayed from calling upon God's name. However, there was hope when Eve gave birth to my ancestor Seth, through whom a new godly line emerged. Humanity was then at a crossroads, divided between the descendants of Cain and those of Seth. With the growth of the world's population, the prevalence of sin also increased, showing itself in cruelty, deceit, theft, and even murder among humans. In those days, people enjoyed astonishing lifespans, often living for hundreds of years. It was a different era, a time when humanity maintained a deep connection to its origins, and the world still felt young and vigorous. Adam, the first man, lived to be 930 years old. Yes, you heard that right, nearly a millennium. His children inherited this exceptional longevity as well. Seth, for instance, lived 912 years, and Enosh, his son, reached 905 years. Over generations, these men passed down their knowledge of farming, animal care, and connection with God to their descendants. This genealogical line was special. They carried the essence of the original union between humanity and the fallen angels. However, despite their prolonged lives and vast wisdom, they were not exempt from typical human challenges like jealousy, anger, and occasionally violence. Yet one man stood out above all: my great-great-grandfather, Enoch. Enoch is remembered as the man in our family who never experienced death. He had a deep and genuine love for the divine, which he demonstrated through unwavering loyalty and a passionate devotion. Because of his devotion, Enoch became a channel for divine power, experiencing impressive manifestations of that power throughout his life. Remarkably, my great-great-grandfather's faith was so strong that he often predicted future events with incredible accuracy. In fact, he foretold the coming divine judgment long before it happened, always anticipating the Lord's judgment on humanity. At 65, Enoch had a son, Methuselah, who was my grandfather. Methuselah's fate seemed tied to mine, as his name meant, when he dies, something important will happen. As time went on, communities of tribes and clans began to form, each tracing its lineage back to one of the original patriarchs. These groups set out to explore new lands to settle. As the population grew, so did their needs and ambitions. Traditional activities like herding and farming were no longer enough to sustain their lifestyles, so they began to seek new ways of living. Families expanded into tribes, and people started to take on diverse roles and trades, from skilled artisans to scholars. These changes were the first signs of the evolution towards civilization, as people organized into more complex social structures where each individual contributed unique skills and talents to the community. Today, 10 generations after Adam, we continue to face challenges, as the land has remained barren since the curse placed on Adam. It is increasingly difficult for people of our time to obtain food and provide for their families. My father, Lamech, lived 182 years before having me. He named me Noah because it was expected that I would bring comfort and relief to our people who work the cursed land in hardship. That is my purpose. I was born to bring relief. The world had become a hostile place. The Nephilim dominated the land. In this chaotic setting, an extraordinary phenomenon arose. The Nephilim were not ordinary beings. They possessed immense strength and were giants in stature, yet their presence only intensified global problems. They were admired, feared, and even worshipped, distracting people from the true God who had created them. Their imposing presence made them fascinating, though they were part of a world sinking deeper into chaos and sin. As the human population grew and more women were born, dark forces began to infiltrate humanity. The sons of God, drawn to the beauty of the daughters of men, took wives from among them as they chose. And who were these sons of God? As I mentioned, they were fallen angels. These angels descended to earth and fathered the Nephilim, or giants. The fallen had corrupted the entire world. These rebellious angels desired human women. Moreover, there were giants on earth in those days, the result of the unnatural union between the sons of God and human women. They were the legendary heroes of the past, men of renown. This is the world in which I live, a world of giants and Nephilim, a world plagued with evil. Then the Lord saw that the wickedness of humanity was vast on earth, and that every thought and intention of the human heart was constantly inclined toward evil. The earth had ceased to be a place of peace and goodness, becoming a stage dominated by sin, violence, and moral degradation. Picture a dark world where individuals are consumed by insatiable desires, endlessly chasing personal interests with no regard for the well-being of others. Concepts like honesty, integrity, and kindness are not only undervalued, but often misunderstood. Instead, deception and manipulation have become the common methods to achieve personal goals. Society is governed by an extreme individualistic focus, an every man for himself mentality. where solidarity and community cohesion are eroded by selfishness and malice. In this environment, families do not serve as sanctuaries of love and support, but turn into arenas of deceit and betrayal. Neighbors do not protect one another, but instead seek to take advantage of each other. Governments do not represent pillars of justice, but are examples of oppression, perpetuating the dominance of the powerful over the weak. It was in the midst of this reality that God observed the profound evil of humanity, its spiritual and moral decay, and felt a deep regret for his creation. Humanity, once the jewel of his creation, had strayed completely. Rather than coexisting in harmony and mutual respect, people allowed themselves to be consumed by violence, evil, and falsehood. God looked upon what he had created and was filled with a deep sorrow. He felt a pain beyond what any human could understand. Imagine a father heartbroken by the actions of a disobedient child, but on a far greater scale. Amidst his immense sorrow, God decided to take drastic action. He chose to wipe from the face of the earth the humanity he had created, including humans, animals, creatures that crawl, and the birds of the sky, for it pained him greatly to see the sins of humanity, and he regretted having created them. The actions of his creatures had disappointed him so deeply that he saw no other way to restore order to a world drowned in chaos. The Spirit of the Lord would not contend with man forever. The time of judgment was drawing near. Fortunately, I found favor in the eyes of the Lord and was saved by his sovereign grace. Every thought of man inclined only toward evil constantly. This says a lot. There wasn't a single part of human nature that hadn't been corrupted by sin. The world was in a state where the population was growing alarmingly, wickedness was common, and demonic activity had spread widely. Evil dominated the human heart, and corruption and violence ruled unchecked. God was exhausted with this situation. Then God looked upon me. He saw me as a righteous man, different from my contemporaries. I maintained a close relationship with God and faithfully followed his ways. Unlike many at that time, I had kept myself free from the corruption that was devastating the earth. My family and I avoided engaging in sinful acts with the fallen angels. While I was not perfect like God, I did my best to follow his commandments and live according to his will. My household consisted of my 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. I followed God's commands as best as I understood and could. Amid a generation dominated by sin and decay, I stood out as a clear example of virtue. My life was marked by impeccable obedience, and I maintained a close and deep relationship with God, similar to the one my great-grandfather Enoch had. While others indulged in worldly desires, I found joy in serving and obeying the Lord. Every moment of my life was a demonstration of God's love and loyalty, and I deeply appreciated the opportunity to walk with him every step of the way. God considered me an upright man. Humanity was entirely corrupt, morally and spiritually decayed in God's eyes, and the earth was filled with violence, contempt, outrage, aggression, and unrestrained ambition for power. Given such corruption and violence on earth, and the extent of this depravity, God revealed to me that he would bring judgment on the wicked along with the earth. He warned me, "I am going to put an end to all creatures, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. I am about to destroy them and the earth." This revealed a serious and widespread problem in the world. At that critical moment, with corruption spreading and divine judgment at the door, I received a revelation from God intended to save my family and me. Despite the dark outlook, a light of hope emerged in the form of divine grace. Instead of completely wiping out humanity, God chose to preserve a small remnant. I did not deserve this grace. I simply found it. Grace cannot be earned. It is discovered by those who seek it. As it's often said, grace became more abundant where sin increased. and so it was in my case. God instructed me, build an ark with gopher wood. This made it clear that this was my task. I was not to delegate it to others to prepare for the coming flood. God gave me detailed instructions to build various compartments in the ark, including stables, kennels, nests, cages and sections to house all types of animals along with their provisions. He also instructed me to coat both the inside and outside of each space with pitch, a natural material used to waterproof wood. This technique proved to be an effective method of preservation, allowing the ark to withstand the flood for an extended period. The durability of the ark perhaps had a greater purpose, serving as a reminder of past judgment and as a warning of a future one. God gave me precise instructions on how to build the ark. It was to be 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high, equivalent to 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet high. The ark's dimensions were similar to a 30-story building, about 450 feet long, approximately 150 meters, 75 feet wide, around 25 meters, and 45 feet high, close to 15 meters. The design did not resemble a traditional ship, but more a large raft specifically designed to float rather than to sail to any particular destination. An ark, in essence, is a large chest, not a conventional vessel. This was reflected in its box-like shape. It was necessary to include a window to ensure light and ventilation, positioned 1 cubit, 18 inches, from the top. The entrance would be located on the side of the ark, and it was to have 3 levels: lower, middle, and upper decks. The ark's structure, despite its basic box shape, was imposing in size. At the top, it had an opening 1 cubit wide, measuring 18 inches or about half a meter. A window was installed in this upper area, offering views to the outside. This window had a cover that could be opened and closed, providing flexibility to control the light and air entering the ark. As I began building the immense ark, I couldn't help but wonder about the reason behind this enormous task. God had commanded me to build the vessel and had announced that judgment would soon come upon the earth. However, at that time, I had no understanding of the real meaning of his words and couldn't imagine the purpose of such a gigantic ship. All I knew was that I needed to trust in God's plan and follow his instructions. Previously, I had received a clear message from the Lord: "You must build it." I followed his instructions to the letter. Later, God revealed more details about his plan, warning me, "I will bring a flood of waters on the earth to destroy all life under heaven. Every creature with the breath of life will perish. Everything on earth will die." I found myself responsible for participating in the most severe judgment and the greatest act of salvation the world had ever seen. It was a moment of extraordinary responsibility and purpose. God promised to establish a covenant with me and assured me that, despite the severe judgment ahead, my family and I were to enter the ark. Thus, God entrusted me not only with my own salvation, but also with preserving a remnant of each animal species, allowing the earth to be repopulated with people and animals after the flood. Then God proclaimed, "Every living creature on earth will perish, but I will establish a covenant with you. You will enter the ark with your 3 sons, your wife, and the wives of your sons. Of every living species on earth, bring 2 of each kind into the ark with you, 1 male and 1 female. This includes all types of birds, animals, and creatures that crawl on the ground, each according to its kind. They will come to you so you can keep them alive. You must also gather all kinds of food that can be eaten. Collect and store it so that it will sustain both you and them." God also instructed me to gather as much food as possible. There would be enough to feed me and all the animals. This would make the ark a refuge for about 35,000 pairs of different species. Did you know that the average size of a land animal is actually smaller than that of a sheep? In fact, the ark had enough space to carry an impressive total of 136,560 sheep, using only half of its maximum capacity. This left ample room for other essentials like food, water, and shelter for everyone on board. It's amazing to think about the scale and capacity of such an extraordinary vessel. God chose me as the messenger of his plan, revealing his intention to destroy this corrupt world through a flood. Today, I hold the secret knowledge of the Lord. I acted according to everything God commanded me. I followed his instructions with absolute faith and devotion. I was diligent and determined to carry out God's will without hesitation or doubt. I faced numerous challenges that extended and complicated the process. I had help. I still had my grandfather Methuselah and my father Lamech with me. The Lord instructed me, "You must bring with you 7 pairs of every clean animal, male and female, and of the unclean animals 1 pair, male and female. You must also bring 7 pairs of every bird of the air, male and female, to preserve their offspring on the earth. In 7 days I will begin to send rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and I will wipe from the surface of the earth every creature I have created." So I did exactly as the Lord commanded. I accepted this monumental task and simply proceeded in obedience. This required vast amounts of materials and many years, but I never deviated from God's directions. As a preacher of righteousness, I proclaimed this message to the people. My family and I spent around 120 years building the ark. During this long period, I had the chance to interact with those around me and explain the purpose of building the ark. My act of obedience also served to denounce worldly behavior and affirm the legacy of righteousness achieved through faith. This story is marked by disobedience and rebellion against the truth. Despite the warnings of impending danger, they chose to ignore the message and reject the ark's protection in a time of rampant unbelief. My message wasn't just words. The very construction of the ark was a testament to my commitment to righteousness. Every hammer blow and nail driven into the wood served as a reminder to the people that they should repent and return to righteousness before it was too late. The ark transcended its simple physical structure to become a powerful symbol of impending judgment. My contemporaries ignored the message that could have offered them salvation. Life continued as usual, filled with celebrations and revelry. People feasted, drank, celebrated weddings, and indulged in their pleasures, all while ignoring God. But finally, the day came when I entered the ark, and the heavens unleashed an unstoppable rain that wiped out every creature too busy to heed the warning. For 120 years I dedicated my life to proclaiming righteousness to the masses, hoping to inspire a change in their hearts and minds. Unfortunately, it seems my words did not have the impact I had hoped for. They went unnoticed and ignored. I wonder if they will ever open their hearts and turn toward the path of righteousness I tried so earnestly to show them. The ark was built 600 years after God endowed humanity with intelligence and the capacity to innovate. With lifespans close to 1,000 years, the achievements of the great innovators of the pre-flood world were remarkable. Our ability to build cities, make musical instruments, and work with metals had reached its industrial peak. Constructing the ark was a colossal task, requiring immense physical effort, considerable investments, and boundless patience. The process was fraught with danger and uncertainty. To outsiders, my project may have seemed like madness or a waste of time. Spending decades building the ark, I endured the mockery and jokes from those around me. Yet I remained firm in my faith and continued with the ark's construction, knowing I was fulfilling my duty and destiny. My role was to follow God's instructions and trust Him to provide what I lacked, including the wisdom needed to build a sturdy vessel and complete the project on time. Imagine how I felt seeing the ark finally completed. Yet, during that time, I lost my father. He would not be with us to witness the flood. Over the years, even the prophet Enoch departed. My ancestor Enoch would not join me on this journey, for God had called him. His words were so significant that he was taken from this world without experiencing death. He disappeared because God had taken him. My forefathers had passed. They would not witness the disaster I was about to face. Finally, the day arrived, the day my people's era, my era, would end. Those I had grown up with would meet their end. Then the Lord instructed me, "Enter the ark, you and your entire family, for you are the only righteous one I have found in this generation." Knowing that God would be in the ark with me was comforting. He not only commanded me to go to the ark, but to come into it, indicating that he himself would be there, ready to welcome me and my family into the great vessel that would serve as a refuge, while the rest of the world perished in the flood. It was an unforgettable moment, one that would stay in my memory forever. As I stood inside the ark, surrounded by animals and the ever-present Spirit of God, the only humans with me were my family members. You can imagine the sorrow of losing everyone you've known. I did everything I could. I warned them for so long. Today, I would lose everyone outside my family circle. Today, all would be judged. The air was filled with the sounds of thousands of creatures, each making its own distinctive noise. After years of intense work, we had finally gathered some of the animals. God endowed them with a remarkable migratory instinct. This was the largest and most complete collection of animals ever gathered, not assembled by human hands. Only divine power could have accomplished such a feat. They entered 2 by 2 into the ark. God has no difficulty getting animals to follow his commands. This was, without a doubt, an exceptional moment. My father was no longer here to witness it. He had passed just 5 years earlier. Perhaps God waited for Enoch, Methuselah, and Lamech to pass away before bringing the flood. Here I am now, without those men of faith. God even recognized my righteousness. I dedicated the years leading up to the flood to active obedience. I didn't just believe in the coming flood, I also followed God's instructions in preparation for it. When I received the command to enter the ark, people watched and whispered as I walked past them. I could hear them making mocking jokes about crazy Noah. Everyone was convinced that a flood would never happen. How could such a thing occur? Yet, as the Bible recounts, the flood did come. The Lord secured me within the ark. The very door that sealed others outside protected us inside. The waters that destroyed the world were the same waters that lifted our vessel. I was 600 years old when the floodwaters fell upon the earth, covering it completely. Thus my sons, my wife, and my sons' wives sought refuge in the ark to escape the devastating waters. From all beings, from clean and unclean animals to birds and to creatures that crawled on the ground, they came in pairs, male and female, driven by God to the ark, just as he had commanded me. And after 7 days, God unleashed the rain, and the floodwaters inundated the earth. In my 600th year, on the 17th day of the 2nd month, the fountains of the deep burst forth, and the windows of heaven were opened. The rain fell on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. My family, the animals, and I took refuge in the ark, waiting for 7 days before the rain began. This act represented a true test of faith after more than 100 years of preparations. At the end of that week, the heavens' windows unleashed their torrents, and the fountains of the abyss burst forth. Waters rose from the ground, triggering massive geological catastrophes. This 40-day and 40-night period was a time of testing and purification before we would enter a renewed world. On that very day, I, Shem, Ham, my sons, my wife, and my sons' 3 wives entered the ark with us. We were joined by all the animals, each by species. livestock, crawling creatures, and all types of birds. Thus, we entered the ark 2 by 2, all the living beings with the breath of life in them. We entered, male and female of each species, as God had commanded, and the Lord closed the door behind us. Everything had been prepared as the Lord instructed. Everything was set for the great flood that God would unleash upon the earth. I didn't have to close the door for others' salvation. God did it himself. Usually we judge who deserves to be saved, but we should leave that decision to God. He kept the door open until the last possible moment, and finally, he closed it. Once sealed, the ark represented salvation for me, while it meant condemnation for the rest of the world. Those left outside the ark lost all chance of redemption. After 120 years, God stopped trying to persuade humanity. Beyond that door lay only death, but within the ark there was absolute peace. The flood lasted 40 days and 40 nights, causing the waters to rise and lift the ark, which floated above the earth. The waters grew stronger and rose until all the high mountains under the heavens were submerged. In fact, the water rose 15 cubits above the highest peaks, covering all the mountains. All living beings on earth perished: birds, livestock, domestic animals, wild creatures, everything that crawled on the ground, and all human beings. Everything on dry land that had the breath of life was annihilated. God wiped out, eliminated, and eradicated every form of life on earth. From humans to animals, reptiles, and the birds of the heavens, all were erased from the world. Only I and those with me in the ark survived. This was a flood that affected the entire planet. It's difficult to conceive the sheer volume of rain that fell, enough to completely cover the mountains. Despite the doubts and disbelief of many, God proved his faithfulness and fulfilled his word. After 120 years, the flood lasted for 150 days before the waters began to recede. During this catastrophe and judgment, my family and I were safe inside the ark, sheltered from the storm. Then God turned his gaze back to us. He remembered me, every living creature, and all the animals that were with me in the ark. He was about to bring a significant change to our lives. He sent a wind over the earth, and the waters began to subside. God was always present and protected me day by day in the ark. Yet there came a moment when it felt as though he turned his attention anew to my situation. It was as if he remembered me again. After spending so much time confined in the ark, at the precise moment, God held me in his thoughts. In the face of a natural catastrophe like a flood, it's common to feel helpless and overwhelmed. But we must remember that the Almighty, creator of the vast universe and our planet, has the power to calm even the most turbulent waters. His wisdom and power transcend what we can understand, and he is capable of handling any challenge, no matter how terrifying it may be. The force of nature can be frightening, but we should always remember that, for the divine power that governs our world, nothing is impossible. As the floodwaters receded, the ark came to rest on Mount Ararat. Picture this scene, an awe-inspiring mountain range whose northern and eastern slopes rise from the wide plain of the Aras River, reaching a formidable height of 3,300 meters above sea level. From the southwest, the mountains rise from a spectacular plain at a dazzling altitude of 5,500 meters above sea level, with an approximate diameter of 40 kilometers. Mount Ararat is a true natural wonder, capable of leaving anyone in awe of its beauty and magnificence. Ararat, the true origin of humanity, our original garden. The heavens thundered and the deep springs broke open, unleashing a torrent upon the earth. For 150 relentless days, the rain gave no respite, threatening to engulf all forms of life. Yet, miraculously, the waters began to recede, gradually revealing the outlines of the world that had been hidden. On the 17th day of the 7th month, the ark found rest on the imposing mountains of Ararat, standing as a symbol of hope amidst desolation. Over time, the water level continued to drop, and finally, on the first day of the 10th month, the mountain peaks appeared on the horizon, heralding the rebirth of life on Earth. The constant rain ceased at last, though the power that had caused it remained palpable. It was the divine dominion of God who determined the flow and stopping of the rains and other waters. Mount Ararat, though not ideal for disembarking from the ark due to its high and mountainous terrain, was the place designated by God. If his will was for the ark to rest there, then it was the perfect place. The animals could disperse in all directions as the floodwaters withdrew. As the waters receded, a magnificent view was revealed. Mountain peaks, once hidden beneath the surface, began to become visible. This global flood had been so devastating that even the mountaintops were initially submerged out of sight. Yet as time passed and the water level continued to lower, the mountains reappeared, showing the power and intensity with which the flood had impacted the planet. After 40 days, filled with hope, I opened the window of the ark I had built with so much effort. Eagerly, I released a raven to explore what lay beyond the ark. The raven flew tirelessly back and forth, flapping its wings in the wind until the waters dried up and the land was uncovered. It's likely that the raven could fly for long periods without resting, perhaps due to its scavenger nature, finding rest and sustenance among the floating debris. However, this type of bird was not enough. We needed a bird that would bring back news. After weeks of confinement in the ark, we decided to send a brave dove to check if the waters had completely receded. Flying over the vast sea that still covered the earth, the weight felt endless. I extended my arm and caught the dove, bringing her close within the ark. Then, with a heart full of anticipation, I waited another 7 days before releasing her again. On her return, the dove carried in her beak a fresh olive leaf, a sign that the waters had begun to recede. What a moving scene! A dove, a symbol of peace, not a creature of carrion. She would not land until she found dry, safe ground. With patience, the dove waited for the right moment to find an appropriate place, showing her purity and grace. But it was not yet over. I waited 7 more days and sent her out again, but this time she did not return. Then I knew that our journey had ended and that we had finally found solid ground. The fact that the dove did not return indicated that new life had begun on Earth. Thus, the raven and the dove were the first to start their lives in this new world. Soon, the other animals would also begin their new existences. God had instructed me to board the ark at a specific time, though he did not reveal when I was to leave. Knowing the time to enter was crucial, and God ensured that I knew it. However, the moment to leave was not revealed, as it was not essential for me to know. He always lets his people know what is truly beneficial for them. In the 601st year, on the first day of the first month, the waters had receded from the earth. I removed the ark's covering and looked out. I saw that the surface of the ground was dry. You can imagine the anticipation in my heart as I waited for the waters to descend, and finally, after being confined in the ark, it happened. Yet we remained in the ark a while longer. By the 2nd month, on the 10th day, the earth was completely dry. Then God instructed me to leave the ark with my wife, my sons, and their wives. Bring out every living creature of all species, including birds, beasts, and all creatures that move on the ground, so that they may reproduce abundantly and multiply on the earth. We exited, my wife, my sons, and their wives, each animal, every crawling creature, every bird, and everything that moves on the earth, leaving the ark in family groups of different shapes and kinds. With the memory of the flood still fresh, I had entered the ark on the 17th day of the 2nd month of my 600th year. For an entire year, I faced the stormy seas until finally, in the second month of the 601st year, I emerged from the ark victorious and full of life. It was a year of profound transformations, and I survived to tell the story. Imagine the earth brimming with life as the creatures from the ark spread across the planet, restoring the vitality and diversity that had vanished before. What a fascinating sight! As I stepped out of the ark, I set foot in a vast world. I moved forward, and the entire world lay before me, ready to explore at my choice. God's covenant with me was sealed. With fervent devotion, I built a majestic altar for the Lord, carefully selecting only the purest and finest animals and birds to offer in burnt sacrifices. Flames rose toward the heavens as I humbly presented my gifts, my heart overflowing with reverence for the Almighty. It was a deeply moving moment that affected me profoundly. The final test of faith, a genuine sacrifice, was about to be fulfilled. With only 7 of each species in the ark, the consequences were significant, but I was clear about what I had to do. I took the risk of possible extinction by sacrificing some of these animals, understanding that costly sacrifices are the ones that please God the most. Are you ready for an exciting challenge? To truly honor and connect with God, we must be willing to make sacrifices that carry a real personal cost. We are invited to give generously from what we have and to offer the sacrifice of praise to Him. So let's take on the challenge and experience the joy of fully surrendering ourselves to God. Pleasing God is not just about giving anything, but about offering sacrifices that truly cost us. The Lord perceived a pleasing aroma, a sweet and satisfying scent, and reflected, "I will never again curse the ground because of man, for the intentions and desires of the human heart are inclined toward evil from youth. Nor will I ever again destroy all living creatures as I have done. As long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, winter and summer, day and night shall not cease." What a wonder! The lavish offering filled God with joy. It was almost as if the exquisite scent of roasted meat filled the air, stirring a deep affection in God's heart. He was so pleased that He made a grand promise for me and for all humanity. God swore that He would never again annihilate all living beings on earth with a flood of such magnitude. This promise was made out of His pure mercy, acknowledging that the human heart tends toward evil from youth. Although humans continue to make mistakes, God chose to spare humanity from such a catastrophe. There it is. The Almighty poured out His blessings on me and my descendants, entrusting us with the care of the earth. The Lord declared, "The fear and dread of you will fall upon all the creatures of the earth, every bird of the sky, everything that crawls on the ground, and all the fish of the sea. They are given into your hands. Every moving thing that lives will be food for you, just as I gave you the green plants. I give you all this, but there is one condition: you must not consume meat that still has its lifeblood in it." The world was no longer as it had been known. With this renewed divine mandate, a new era began, and possibilities expanded without limit. This echoed God's words to Adam: "Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Have dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, and every living creature that moves on the earth." Just as Adam was instructed on what to eat, I was now explicitly permitted to consume animals. God also imposed that, in killing and eating these creatures, there must be a deep respect for the blood. Blood is crucial. It represents the very essence of life. Therefore, it is no surprise that it must be treated with the utmost respect, whether it's animal or human blood. It symbolizes the core of our existence. When blood is spilled, life itself is extinguished. This is not about superstitions or mystical beliefs. It's an acknowledgement of the sanctity of all forms of life. Some practiced the consumption of blood, but this was not the path laid out by the Lord. He warned, Surely I will seek justice for spilled blood. I will demand an account for the life of every animal and every man, and from each brother I will demand the life of man. Whoever takes another's life, by human hands shall his life be taken, for man was made in the image of God. And to you he said, Be fruitful and multiply, spread abundantly on the earth and increase in it, following his divine command. If anyone's blood is shed, a thorough investigation must be carried out. This is because God created man in his own image, and therefore human life has intrinsic value and cannot be taken without consequence. The words, "By man his blood shall be shed," resonate with a profound message. They remind us that life is precious and must be defended at all costs. For a crime as grave as murder, God establishes that the perpetrator deserves the highest penalty, capital punishment. The rigor of the divine mandate also demands justice for the life of every being, including each animal, as God does not tolerate any illegitimate killing. Be fruitful and multiply was emphasized again due to the urgency of the situation. Our planet needed to be repopulated urgently, and we are responsible for ensuring the continuity of our species. God established a covenant with humanity and with all of creation. Then he addressed me and my sons, declaring, "Now I establish my covenant, my unbreakable commitment and solemn promise, with you, with your descendants, and with every living creature with you, birds, livestock, and all the wild animals of the earth around you, all creatures that come out of the ark, every creature on earth. I promise that never again will all life be destroyed by the waters of a flood, nor will there be another flood to destroy the earth." God reaffirmed his promise, ensuring that he would never again destroy the world through a flood. This promise reiterated and clarified his previous covenant. God didn't view sending the flood as an error or too severe. Rather, he provided this assurance that the evil conditions before the flood would not recur in the same way. God proclaimed, "This rainbow will be the sign, a clear symbol and memorial of the solemn covenant I establish between me and you, and with every living being that accompanies you, for all future generations. I will set my bow in the clouds, and it will be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. When I bring clouds over the earth, the rainbow will appear, and I will remember with benevolence the covenant between you and me, and every creature of flesh. Never again will the waters become a flood to destroy all life. When the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will solemnly reaffirm the eternal covenant between God and all creatures of the earth." Then God explained to me, "This rainbow is the sign of the covenant, a firm commitment I have made between me and all forms of life on earth." Consider this, an extraordinary covenant made not only between God and humanity, but with every creature that walks, crawls, flies, and swims in this world. Even the earth itself was included in this promise, as the release of water vapor during the flood transformed the earth's water cycle. This might have been the moment when the first rainbow illuminated the sky. God chose the rainbow as a sign for me and for all future generations of his faithfulness to the covenant. And so the first rainbow appeared. Can you imagine what it would be like to witness the first rainbow on our planet? Even more astonishing is that God chose this brilliant display as a symbol of his constant commitment to me and all generations to come. The rainbow is also a promise to you. Every time you see one, remember it. Whenever we see a rainbow, it serves as a powerful reminder of God's constant faithfulness and of his fulfillment of every promise made. Indeed, this phenomenon confirms that the covenant of peace God established with humanity is as firm and enduring as the one he made with me and all future generations. However, this covenant also brought significant challenges. At that time, I was the oldest man in the world, and a very sad event was about to occur, one that would deeply affect my descendants. My sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, who came out of the ark with me, would become the ancestors of the people who would populate and disperse across the earth. They would be the foundation of the new world, and my grandson Canaan would be cursed because of the events that followed the catastrophe. After surviving the devastating flood, I emerged as a renewed man, determined to start a new life for myself and my family. With renewed vigor, I embarked on an exciting journey of exploration and discovery, planting a variety of crops, including a splendid vineyard that promised an abundant harvest. I used the grapes to make wine. I drank this wine, became drunk, and ended up naked inside my tent. Ham, the father of Canaan, accidentally saw my nakedness and, unfortunately, told his two brothers outside. Then Shem and Japheth took a cloak, placed it on their shoulders, and walked backward to cover my nakedness, avoiding looking at me. It's said that Ham, with satisfaction, recounted what he had seen in my tent. He chose to ridicule me, his own father, thus undermining my authority as a man of faith. Ham's attitude revealed his disregard for me. When I awoke from the effects of the wine, I learned what Ham, my youngest son, had done. I then declared, "Cursed be Canaan, descendant of Ham. He shall be the lowest of slaves to his brothers." I also proclaimed, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and may Canaan serve him. May God extend Japheth, and may he dwell in the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be his servant." The sentence was severe. Canaan would be subject to Shem. However, this was not the end of evil in the world. Years later, in the repopulated earth, a man named Nimrod emerged, transforming everything we knew. Nimrod was born in a world renewed by divinity after a cataclysm that had wiped out much of human and animal life. Nimrod went on to found two of the greatest empires of ancient times. Nimrod's actions led many people away from God. The divine mission for me and my heirs was to repopulate the earth. However, grouped in the plain of Shinar, they showed no interest in spreading out and colonizing the world, or caring for the creation that God had majestically placed before them. Instead, they chose to rebel against this divine directive. This clearly shows that human desires often go against divine plans. Yet, it shouldn't surprise us, as humanity tends to resist what God lays out for them unless redeemed by grace through faith in Jesus Christ. Scripture affirms that God's will always prevails, unaltered by human attempts to subvert it. His plans unfold seamlessly, as demonstrated when God easily halted the construction of the Tower of Babel. The Lord scattered the people across the world and confused their languages, ending the building of the city. Imagine the people's astonishment at this sudden divine intervention that mixed their languages. For God, altering the course of humanity is effortless. His designs are unchangeable. 3 centuries after the Great Flood, my time in this world is drawing to an exciting close. That said, who am I? I am the living testimony of a life of faith. By faith, I preached about what was yet unseen, and moved by reverent fear, I built an ark to save my family. By faith, I descended from the godly line of Seth, in whose days people began to call on the name of the Lord. I am the result of the obedience and loyalty my ancestors showed toward God. In essence, being righteous before God means being just with others and maintaining a relationship of reverence and worship toward Him. The Almighty Lord has the power to save the righteous from every trial and tribulation. Reflecting on my own life, it becomes clear that sin does not go unpunished. The day of judgment is near. My name is Noah, and this is my story.